That was Greg Phillips and Catherine Engelbrecht being taken into federal custody yesterday. And that comes from sources sitting in the courtroom. When enough babies are aborted, when enough children abused, when enough girls raped, when enough women murdered, when enough cops castrated, when enough troops trannied, the final option is kinetic. Violence solves everything. Fighting isn't winning. Gunfights don't start with buzzers. Aiming beats auto fire. Protect with pistols. Rescue with rifles. Shoot to save. Move to live. Stay low. Go fast. Shoot first. Die last. One shot, one kill. No luck, all skill. Conceived and raped, orphaned and adopted, claimed by Christians, initiated by indigenous, tribally trained, martial arts mastered, PSYOPs and special forces served, decades of duty in DEA and DIA, intelligence inducted, deep state betrayed, Yeshua saved, dedicated to Republic rescue, American exceptionalism, and redemption by God's grace. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Welcome, everybody. Happy to be with you. Please go to jeffreyprather.com, JEFFREYPRATHER.com. Subscribe for my free updates. You may want to go into my shop there, and you can see at the bottom of the banner there. Haven't talked about this much, but go to pratherdeal.com. Get your sat phones or your bivy sticks. Those are good covert ways of communication. Also, you can get your emergency food supply, which is up at pratherdeal.com, and definitely go into the shop at jeffreyprather.com. Get your Faraday bags so you can confound the deep state and they can't track and ping you. So, and before I get going, hey, Inde Apache, thank you for the Chiricahua challenge coin. Appreciate that very much. And to the Wire family who does great coffee, get that coffee in the biz page on jeffreyprather.com. Love that coffee. My wife and I love it. We have it every morning. So that was a video clip of Greg Phillips and Catherine Engelbrecht, OPSEC, and True the Vote being taken in federal custody for contempt. Been talking about that for several weeks. Had George Webb briefly on my show, along with Ty Callender briefly, and Lisa McGee yesterday on my new American Media Periscope show, which goes on at 5 o'clock Eastern, Monday and Wednesdays, and was trying to get that live. Actually had George live. They are still in custody today. We will see where they are tomorrow. It's about contempt charge for not revealing their confidential source, which is confusing. Because if it is a confidential source, of course, you are not to reveal them. I know of what I speak. I have run many confidential human sources. In fact, that's how I became a whistleblower with the DEA. I have WITSEC'd. I have placed 2 confidential sources into the witness protection program back in the day. I am intimately familiar how all this works. And there are a lot of questions arising, but prayers out for Greg and Catherine still. When George Webb has been the only real journalist on the ground there at the Houston courtroom, which shows you that the mainstream media, the legacy press, the propaganda press, the drive-by media are not interested. They are told to stand back from this. Of course, this is a crucial story as we go into the midterms here coming into November. I guess George's feed even made it to the Charlie Kirk show as well. And George did a number of interviews, including with me. And there is an indication, so I'm always going to be honest with you, that this may be an FBI counter insurgency operation as well. We will see where this goes. I'm very well aware of those who have given up on Trump because he supported the jab, given up on Flynn because he had overseas dealings. All of us have our sins. How I can tell who the good guys are is who the bad guys attack. But none of us are perfect. And most of you have never been through what they are going through. In fact, they're going through something I've never gone through. I've never been in jail. I was never charged by DEA, DOJ, and I've never been convicted of anything. But there are concerns about this, and where the truth goes, we will follow that, and I will bring that out. For example, a while back, I apologized and confessed on my show when I had curated some stories from Forward Observer, who had curated stories. But since then, I've looked at what they're putting out. There's nothing about any Chinese infiltration, espionage, FBI betrayals, nothing. And now I adjudge them to not be reliable sources. That's separate from me. But I am going to continue to keep my honor and integrity so that you can trust me. But George's purpose was to get this out before the New York Times or Washington Post or something came out and said whatever, which I certainly appreciate. But there is a possibility that this may be trying to bury this at the midterms, the FBI interfering yet again, going to keep them locked up as they have interfered in the previous elections with Hillary and with Trump, where they interfered with both sides. And certainly they do interfere. It's following Biden's instructions, or the Federal Bureau of Information Influence Operations. There's an article out there by Applebaum, who is probably, that's a fake name. He's got lots of likely Mossad connections of 2,000 Mules from Outer Space, which is a scathing critique of Greg Phillips in particular. There's lots of issues and concerns, but we will see where this goes. But the most telling thing, I think, is that no mainstream media are there. They have been told not to be there. On other fronts where there are other great reporters, Harry the Greek, and again, I want to emphasize how this is what Team America is really about, is me as a former intelligence officer working with George Webb, with Harry the Greek, with American patriots on Team America and George Webb's investigative teams, all pulling together Restore Our Republic. That's exactly what we should be doing. But Harry has a story talking about BlackRock partnering with KONNECH to fix the November 8th election. And BlackRock, of course, is the most powerful fiscal entity in the world. It has lots of influence and control in the Biden gang regime. It has lots of influence and control in transportation and diesel and rail. We've talked about this before. It's got lots of influence in the Pentagon, the NSA, and the FBI, and therefore it has a lot of pull on the November elections. And but I will say, what is certainly true is that KONNECH does connect back to China, to Wuhan, through the Pentagon. There is no doubt about all of that. Harry the Greek has done a great job of laying all that out, doing the FBI DHS job for them. But, and again, I'm quoting Harry the Greek story, KONNECH's CEO, Eugene Yu, has a partner for its offices in San Francisco and Los Angeles. Remember, Yu is still charged in Los Angeles. And this partner is Michael Lee of 380 Swift Avenue, Unit 18, San Francisco. Lee works for BlackRock as a portfolio manager, selling investments. KONNECH Inc., a voting machine systems software company, and he is involved in BlackRock, the SEC, KONNECH's CEO, Eugene Yu, and the California Secretary of State. And I'm looking at the official documents through the SEC that prove that. So is Michael Lee a silent partner to Eugene Yu in KONNECH's Los Angeles office? With a silent partner, Harry asks, wire a $500,000 check to the LA clerk of courts to post his partner's bond. hide his photo on the internet as if he works for the CIA unit or FBI, work for BlackRock's Aperio investment portfolio division. All those are valid questions. And right here, I'm looking at the Michigan Secretary of State statement and designation by a foreign corporation, which doesn't mean KONNECH, outside the United States, just means outside of Michigan, listing KONNECH Inc. and Michigan, signed by Michael Lee, but then, printed by Michael Lee of San Francisco, the 380 Swift Avenue, number 18, South San Francisco, California address, and then signed by Eugene Yu. So there is a serious BlackRock KONNECH connection there. And of course, we know our government is infiltrated everywhere. I'll be talking about that when I speak this Saturday in Branson, Missouri at the Freedom and Health with Clay Clark at 9:30. I think I am 9:15, 9:30, something like that. If you're interested, looking forward to seeing you there. We'll be there briefly. But this ties back to China because there's Team America and there's Team Global Freedom, because all of the world is interwove. And there is an important point out, story out that is reported on the internet, that there are clashes between Chinese police and civilians in the Foxconn factory in Zhengzhou. And there were a lot of gunshots, and this just happened. And this report is out today. And this report is by a Chinese reporter, Li Zhaokui, in the Wuhan pneumonia epidemic in Zhengzhou, Henan province, which has continued to spread. Of course, we know there is nothing really to COVID. Now they're making very virulent strains everywhere, but the original. And this is a translated story, and it's probably AI'd as well, so it's a little difficult to follow. But it says, following the overnight Great Escape in Zhengzhou, Great Escape, referring to the famous movie, which is the Allied Air Force personnel escaping from the Germans. But this is, they're making an analogy to people trying to get out of the lockdown there in Zhengzhou and Wuhan. Was recently reported that an employee in a Foxconn dormitory was infected with the virus, and news of death. Officials are suspected of worrying about the leakage of information and launched an operation to block mobile phone signals in the factory area. Very much what our government is doing. It's reported on the internet that a conflict between officials and people broke out in the Foxconn factory in Zhengzhou. And British Reuters has reported that after the outbreak of the Wuhan pneumonia in Zhengzhou, Foxconn, the world's largest Apple iPhone foundry, reported that its employees were infected on a large scale. So this ties into, if you saw my other show on American Media Periscope, where I had Lisa McGee, Todd Callender talking about 5G and the cesium-137 radioactive burns occurring through the 5G via the phones. We had diagrams. If you haven't seen that, you go to patreon.com/Jeffrey Prather. And also jeffreyprather.locals.com, or Todd Callender. You can go see Todd's stuff at disabledrightsadvocates.com. So that its employees were infected on a large scale. There was a shortage of supplies in the factory. The employees were forced to stage a great escape and return home on foot. So this is a very significant inflection point because, of course, all of this, the COVID, the Wuhan, the 5G, this all comes out of China and out of Wuhan. And it says, subsequently, some netizens, I guess that's a misprint, disclosed the reason why Foxconn employees in Zhao fled was due to the unfortunate deaths of employees in the factory. According to the screenshots, the people in room 762 are dead. Previously, employees in the dormitory lived in a mixture of yin and yang, male and female, black and white, strong, causing employees who were not infected to have fever and nowhere to retreat. According to rumors, all 8 people in the dormitory died. I think those numbers are low. Another online video shows that a large number of Foxconn employees wearing protective clothing are waiting to take the bus to an isolation point. There are also pictures showing that an employee in a dormitory in the Foxconn factory was suspected to have died on the upper bunk bed. and several personnel dressed in epidemic prevention clothing arrived at the scene to pull him away. The most surprising thing is that when the Zhengzhou government failed to prevent and control the epidemic, the online video shows that there are many Chinese mobile signal vehicles in the Foxconn factories in Zhengzhou. In this regard, the people can't help but complain. China Mobile is worried that the tens of thousands of Foxconn employees have poor internet access, so they drove the signal car directly to the isolation point. So they're talking about stopping the signal, but the story is that they're giving them service and that they are dying from COVID, but that they are shooting them because there's a revolt in the Apple factory. This is very significant because the Apple phone is the deep state intelligence tracking device that also has a telephone feature. And Wuhan is the center for all of the fifth generation operations that have gone out worldwide. And this is a revolt. This is them beginning to collapse from within. But there are also pictures showing that Foxconn employees were intercepted by large numbers of armed police on their way back home, and even armed police with live ammunition guarded several traffic arteries. So they were blocking off the streets. And they keep talking about armed live ammunition and that there's a lot of conflict between police, and the employees are resisting. That is, they are not just submitting, they are fighting back. So while this is tragic, this is good news because the resistance continues to build. Remember, I've talked before about 300 miles from Beijing, there were bank riots, runs on the banks. And now in Wuhan, there is this collective great escape in Zhengzhou. And Foxconn has issued 3 notices in succession. The first was to protect employees from fighting fires. So I guess they're burning them up. I've talked before and shown before the so-called hospitals, which are little white prisons that they have put up there, and the incinerators and the screams coming from incinerators and all the numbers of iPhones that went off. That's a way to see what is going on. And it is. It says it's worth noting that the Washang Finance reprinted an article publicly released by the Zhengzhou Foxconn Party secretary October 30th, saying that after the outbreak, Foxconn tried its best to mobilize resources internally and deal with it externally, less support. Think about your country, city. How long did it take to control the epidemic? What was the price? Apart from giving some symbolic vegetables and condolences, what did you receive during this period? Did you provide everyone with daily supplies, 3 meals a day? So that's indicative that they are starving them, that they're locked them down. This is the chains on the apartments. And this, again, is force. This is exactly what we're seeing in the corrupt Biden administration. We're seeing it in China. We're seeing it is no one is believing them or the pandemic or the PSYOP anymore, and they are using force. And so while this is tragic, it is a good sign that the resistance is rising. After the publication of the Su Dongji's public article, it aroused many speculations in the outside world, such as whether the CCP government really cares about the Chinese people. So these are heresy. These are things you can say in the United States, but you cannot say anything like this in a communist country. And so this is very significant and very good news that the resistance is rising. This is at the same time the Atlantic came out. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time that the mainstream legacy press talks about, like the Pelosi's husband having a homosexual tiff with a bum who lives in a bus. And it's quite obvious. And I've talked to the San Francisco emergency room physicians who talk about all the anal atrocities that they see from the homosexual population there. And this is that. Of course, they're covering it up because these people are corrupt monsters. So, not a lot of time on that. The Atlantic Monthly asking for an amnesty while Petraeus pushes a NATO-led, or not even NATO, but some kind of U.S.-led response like Iraq into Ukraine because he's being told to. those are the Petraeus thing's more relevant. The Pelosi thing is just, yeah, they're evil, corrupt, and they're destroying themselves and dying off, and they're screw taping themselves. That's not really important. I'm going to talk about the intelligence that they're not going to talk about, that they're not going to tell you, and what I assess as the inflection points in the Great Resistance versus the Great Reset, in the parents versus the pedos. And so the FBI is now asking a judge to delay the Seth Rich laptop release for 66 years, or maybe 666 years would be better, like the monster drink, which is the characters in Hebrew for that. And so the reason is because Rich was working, I've talked about this forever, CrowdStrike, not going to repeat that whole story, but he was executed. He was assassinated, shot in the back of the head. They left his watch and wallet as a warning. And of course, this is probably how, probably not possibly, how the Dem leak came out. And this was what the demonic Dems do when somebody dares to cross them. This is the Killery. This begins back in my day with the cocaine, CIA, Contras, and Cash and Clintons. But in this new filing, lawyers are arguing that the FOIA, Freedom of Information requests, could reasonably be expected to disclose the identity of a confidential source. So this is very interesting because in Houston, the Greg Phillips and the judge are asking for the identity of a confidential source, although we probably know who that is. There's some talk back and forth that he has said he was a confidential source. Confidential sources are people that are signed up to work for you. Normally, they're not patriots. They're somebody that you've caught and you are allowing them to possibly work off a beef. But now the FBI, who claimed they didn't have the laptop, now says that they have the laptop, or they have a duplicate. That's typically what you do, is you make a duplicate and then you put the original into evidence. You don't want to break the evidence seal all the time. So you have a working duplicate of the cell phone or the recording or the laptop or whatever, so you can work from that while you keep the laptop in evidence with chain of custody. Of course, with the FBI, it just disappears. In DEA, that would have been DEA 7A, because the 7 was drug evidence. A non-drug was 7A, and then destruction of evidence would be a DA 48. Non-drug evidence would be a DA 48A. So there's a procedure for all of this. The FBI has theirs, which is just lie and cheat about everything. But now they're saying, yeah, we have it, but it could reveal the identity of a confidential source. Would that be the confidential source? Would be the wet worker or hired assassin that killed Seth Rich? Well, I don't know, but that sounds likely for the FBI. But again, they are resorting to force because they have no power left. Very important to understand that and realize that. And got something here coming in here, and I'm not sure to put this out. But let me see here. So I'm not sure I'm going to put that information out, but they're sweating them, which is no surprise. That's what they do, seeing how if they will crack or turn on each other. A lot of controversy because they're using the same attorney. Greg and Catherine, they should be split up for attorney-client privilege. I don't know why they're doing that. George Webb recommended that too. I recommend that. Then I guess George got into a fight with somebody on the internet or something about that. But that is continuing. So we will see where that goes. And again, whether it's Trump or Flynn or Musk or Putin, the ally of my ally is the enemy of my enemy is my ally. And so that's really important. And that's how I look at this, because you're in combat when you're short of everything but enemy. We are not short of enemies, so we need all the allies we can get. So I'm willing to overlook things as well. Again, I make the analogy of the Patriot, where Heath Ledger goes to Mel Gibson. These aren't the sort of guys we want for our fight. And he goes, these are exactly the sort of guys, brawlers and fighters and sinners. But to move on to the most important story. So what I really want to get across is that the mainstream media, the legacy media, the propaganda press, the drive-by media, whatever you want to call them, that's all controlled by the intelligence agencies. It's all psyops. It's all optics. It's just like the politicians are actors. So the actors at the news folks are reading scripts that the politician actors are giving them. There's very few real statesmen, but the case in Houston and in LA is very revealing, because it shows cracks in the deep state's control structure, going all the way back to China. And now we are seeing, as I just talked about, revolts where the people are fighting back. Unarmed Chinese are fighting back and getting killed against the CCP assassins. That is significant. That is not the end. This is the beginning. It didn't end in Wuhan. It began. And so they are falling from within, because there is rot from within, just like there is rot in the Biden regime. But there is another case that's even more important to talk about. And this is by a Tracy Beans. The bombshell court order outlines proven government big tech censorship. And this just came out. And again, it's up on my Patreon, up on my locals. And so Americans worried about the government conspiring with social media companies to censor their speech aren't conspiracy theorists. It's been proven. So on Friday, one of the few honest judges left in America ordered several key figures to sit for depositions in a court case brought against the federal government by the states of Louisiana and Missouri. So again, it's not Texas and Florida, which got all the publicity, although great free states, but it's other smaller states that are quieter and doing more. In the case, the states alleged that several key bureaucracies in the federal government have conspired with big tech companies to censor free speech. When the case was filed, the judge granted a very rare expedited discovery. Now the parties returned to court to ask the judge to force people who wouldn't usually be subject to deposition at all, let alone in an expedited manner, to sit for depositions, to get them under oath about what they've done. So this is really crucial, because there's an elite that doesn't have to be deposed. That's the two-tier justice system that we have. But in Missouri, there is lawfare under the law working. Why is this important? Well, remember the intro I read today. It was KONNECH, which I don't usually do. I've been a federal firearms instructor since 1993, graduated from the Special Forces Special Operations Tactics School in 1988. Got a lot of trigger time, trained everybody. Anybody who's seen me shoot can tell you about my skill sets, written for all the tactical magazines, SWAT mag, my tactical DVDs sold in Army Air Force exchange stores, got lots of creds there, done over 500 raids, this country and the other. So, but I'm not usually talking about kinetics because 5th gen and 4th gen war is really not about that. We're building the resistance. But if the system is irreparable, and this is what Political Moonshine is trying to find out, then it goes to where Clay Martin is at, it goes to 4th generation kinetic resistance, which nobody wants, because once you flip that switch, you can't just turn it off. It's not a movie. That's what Obama thought he could do in Benghazi. So this is good news And so the judge granted that request, and his order illuminates a conspiracy that spans almost every governmental institution. So we learned that Fauci, the State Department, CISA, which is the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, the CDC, the White House, and other government organizations have engaged in unconstitutional and Orwellian behavior. And what the difference is, it has been proven, not alleged, in this court case. This is good news. This pushes back Going Kinetic, that they have acted in a manner. The head of CISA has designated our thoughts as critical infrastructure within the United States government, the thought police, Big Brother, 1984. The Census Bureau got involved with tracking down people posting what the Ministry of Truth considers mis, dis, or malinformation. CISA is calling your thoughts cognitive infrastructure. And the Census Bureau is somehow assisting the government with censoring facts they don't like. So this is the Missouri versus Biden case. And some of these expedited dispositions are relatively unheard of. That's why I'm talking to you about them. And usually these things don't happen. So this is really good news. So the case alleges that members of the government conspired with conspiracy. And that's not conspiracy theory. There's conspiracy in government. For example, with me, it's Title 21 USC 841A1C, conspiracy to possess and distribute large amounts of drugs conspired and directed social media platforms to censor people and topics they don't like because of mis, dis, and malinformation. For example, CISA 2022 interim election security now says directed misinformation is a persistent threat. And they detail the origin of COVID, election integrity, early treatment, Hunter's laptop, and more. It says NIAID Director and White House Chief Medical Advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Deputy Assistant to the President and Director of White House Digital Strategy, Rob Fleischer, former White House Senior COVID-19 Director, Andrew Slavitt, former White House Press Secretary, Jen Psaki, FBI Supervisor Special Agent Elvin Chan, CISA Director, John Easterly, CISA official, Lauren Protentis, and Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, CDC Chief of Digital Media Branch, Carol Crawford, and Acting Coordinator of the State Department's Global Engagement Center, Daniel Kimage. So first, the judge makes sure to tell everyone how rare and difficult it is actually to surpass this burden, because executive department officials should not be absent except for extraordinary circumstances. Because if you pull them all the time, if you accuse them all the time, they'll never have any time to get anything done. So it's out of the ordinary, but there is precedent for calling them when it is important under extraordinary circumstances. And the judge says these are that. The next bit of order addresses the defendant's objections, and he puts most of them to bed. And here is how he does it with Anthony Fauci. Which I know people who know him because I've worked in competitive biointelligence since 2014, only for the good guys. That's genetics, robotics, information, nanotechnology. But Fauci is being deposed as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, and chief medical advisor to the president. They allege he colluded to censor speech about Charlie 19 origins, that he was potentially behind the funding research to create the virus. They had a conference call which resulted in people making statements in medical journals about the origins of Charlie 19. And that the speech backed by the great scientific credibility and with enormous potential nationwide impact contradicted Fauci's views and was censored by social media. And so plaintiff states urged that Fauci engaged in written and oral communications with Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, Facebook, LogLife, CIA, DARPA, BARDA, about the government's COVID-19 response and allegedly widespread social media censorship of the lab leak hypothesis ensued. I don't even say it was a leak. communications with Zuckerberg about the government's COVID, Charlie-19 response, and allegedly widespread social media censorship ensued. Plaintiffs further this argument by pointing out the publicly available emails between Fauci and Collins regarding their efforts to discredit the lab leak theory, assert led to the censorship of the theory online. These emails indicate that Fauci and Collins were both aware of certain scientists' concerns and that Sierra Alpha, Robert, Charlie, Victor looked bioengineered. That is the furin cleavage. The next section contains allegations about the Great Barrington Declaration and how the heads of the NIH, National Institute of Health, worked to create a quick and devastating takedown of the declaration, which is chilling. Unelected bureaucrats discussing the takedown of alternative scientific opinions. On April 16, 2020, Dr. Collins emailed Fauci a link to the Bret Baier article about the lab leak theory, expressing concerns over whether NIH can help to take down the very destructive conspiracy that seems to be gathering momentum. And next we get to what Twitter did to Alex Berenson. Twitter recently settled, like with St. Rittenhouse, a case with Berenson and reinstated him to the platform. This is before Musk. This kind of censorship has happened to untold numbers of people. Plaintiffs next assert that Fauci was involved in Twitter's permanent suspension of any jab critics. And Berenson's tweets consisted of science-based objections to the jabs of young, healthy people, which became a target for the Biden regime's censorship. So then plaintiffs allege Pfizer got in on the action because the government, the Biden regime is controlled by the Pfizer cartel. It's no longer the deal with the Sinaloa cartel and the government of Mexico with La Familia cartel. The legal cartels are much bigger and more powerful and profitable for the sellouts. And then plaintiffs allege that Pfizer got in on the action because Berenson's speech threatened Fauci directly, who claims himself to be science. That is, he is the god of science, which is funny because science doesn't know what energy is, sentience is, conscience is, reality is, anything. They can observe some phenomena. And I always get a laugh when somebody says, well, do you believe in evolution? And I always answer, well, I didn't know I had to believe in a theory. I guess that's your religion. But I thought it was a theory, a hypothesis. So then the judge says that the plaintiffs have already proven that Fauci had personal knowledge about the censorship and that publicly available emails prove that Fauci was communicating and acting as an intermediary for others in order to censor information from being shared across multiple social media outlets. He didn't say allege or potentially show. He used the word prove. This is substantive. This is going into the record. This is wake up. There's plenty of proof. It's about prosecution. And finally, we have broken through in Missouri where they weren't looking. So we've talked about this many times in Team America meetings with all kinds of different attorneys. Talked about having to flank them, and Missouri has flanked them. And this is kind of like the analogy of Saving Private Ryan or Longest Day, where they're trying to get through the wire, get off the beach, and having a hard time breaking through. And all kinds of different units are trying to break through. And it's very expensive and difficult and bloody, but it is finally happening. And so after reviewing the plaintiffs' and defendants' arguments, the court finds that the plaintiffs have proven that Fauci has personal knowledge about the issue concerning censorship of social media as it related to Charlie-19 and ancillary issues of Charlie-19. So the judge is saying that that free speech is more important than inconveniencing Fauci, or as the article says science because Fauci's like, I am science. That's like Caesar. I am a god. That's what it is today. Is PhD. That's the sacred priest title of today. I could call myself Dr. Prather. I have on. Some people have put me up on some of my websites as Dr. Prather. I don't really use it. I kind of like Major Prather. Could do former Special Agent Prather. Nantanchan. Chaplain Prather, Chief Chaplain. But could do the doctor thing. But I just think it's kind of stuffy to do it. Got 2 honorary PhDs, 2 bachelors, a master's. Again, the judge is expediting all of this, and he's saying the plaintiffs have already proven all of this. And the case is just getting started. The plaintiffs then moved to depose Rob Flaherty, who is the director of digital strategy for the White House, a key official in the White House's pressure campaign on social media to increase Charlie 19 censorship and social media companies' policies. Because all we know, all the doctors get paid, the hospitals get paid. The more they kill, the more they get paid. It's the same thing with Facebook when the Blantifa guys are killing people online, like they killed that retired black police chief online so they could get paid. It's all the same thing. And plaintiffs moved to depose Flaherty, director of digital strategy. Flaherty is also said to have had extensive oral meetings with social media platforms, including Twitter, Meta, Facebook, and YouTube, on jab hesitancy and combating misinformation. Just went up on a new Yankee Tango. It didn't end. Probably be down here shortly. Yet again, but I can actually look at comments, which I don't have any, and it gives me a clock, a countdown. I got lots of stuff going on. I'm a dinosaur. So the court finds that plaintiffs have proven that Flaherty has personal knowledge about the issue concerning censorship across social media as it related to Charlie 19 and ancillary issues of Charlie 19. So this statement basically seals the win for the plaintiffs. The statement itself means that the plaintiffs have won. It acknowledges the collusion directly. Plaintiffs maintain that deposing Flaherty is essential to the case. It would provide critical information on the White House's pressure campaign to social media platforms against the disinformation dozen and other Charlie 19 misinformation issues, especially as it relates to those leaning on social media companies after press reports were released regarding jabs and the White House's involvement over content modulation policies instilled in Meta and Twitter in their efforts to remove the most harmful Charlie 19 misinformations. The court finds that plaintiffs have proven that Flaherty had personal knowledge about these issues concerning censorship and Charlie 19. This is a judge, not a party's attorney or someone as a party. The substantive reason for taking Flaherty's depositions set out therein, and court finds the substantive reasons are overwhelming. It is ordered that Rob Flaherty cooperate with plaintiff's request to depose. Then we go on to Andrew Slavitt. Defendant Andrew Slavitt serves as the White House senior Charlie 19 advisor. He led the charge for the White House with its social media companies to increase the censorship of private speech as it relates to Charlie 19 through meetings and oral conversations. And they quote, the director at the White House is asking a social media platform why they haven't banned a private citizen for things he is saying. And so they're quoting an invitation that was sent out, which stated, the White House staff will be briefed by Twitter on jab misinformation. So this is very, very significant. And Slavitt even bragged about his censorship role on a podcast. The court finds the plaintiffs have proven that Andrew Slavitt has personal knowledge about the issue concerning censorship across social media as it relates to Charlie 19 and ancillary issues. So then they go on to Jen Psaki, the former White House press secretary of Pedo Joe. She is a defendant. The plaintiff moves to depose her for a variety of reasons. Psaki stated that a White House press conference, the major platforms have a responsibility related to the health and safety of all Americans to stop amplifying untrustworthy content, disinformation, and misinformation, especially related to the Charlie 19 jabs and elections. So she wants to cover it all. The court finds that plaintiffs have proven that Jen Psaki has personal knowledge about the issue concerning censorship across social media as it relates to Charlie 19 and ancillary issues of Charlie 19. And then we come to Elvis John, the FBI SAC, supervisory agent. And this is back to the Biden laptop that the FBI said they didn't have, and then they did have, and now that there's an informant involved. Oh no, sorry, that was the Seth Rich cover-up. I'm getting my FBI cover-ups messed up. It's hard to keep Ruby Ridge, Waco, Uvalde, Benghazi. It's hard to keep all of the FBI cover-ups straight. They must have difficulties with that. So, and I guess Joe Rogan had him had a podcast about this, and the plaintiffs moved to depose Elvis Chan, a named defendant in this case, and the FBI supervisory special agent of Squad Charlie Yankee 1 in San Francisco. I think I've seen this guy. It doesn't look like it looks even more white collar than most Phoebes do. In support of this argument, plaintiffs cite a podcast where Mark Zuckerberg stated that the communications from the FBI led to a Facebook censoring stories of the Hunter Biden laptop. So this is what happens is flanking them all around. They can't keep all their stories straight because they have to lie. Now here the court used different language when it came to Chan. The judge didn't say proven. He said that plaintiffs have established that he has a personal knowledge. And so he's probably wary of the Phoebes, which he probably should be. So that means he is smart. But he says it's ordered that Chan will cooperate with the plaintiff's request to depose him. Of course, it'll probably be like Comey is. I don't remember. Jen Easterly, plaintiffs moves to depose the director of CISA from the Department of Homeland Security, supervising the Nerve Center, the Fusion Center of the federally directed censorship. That is, again, because of the thought police, that they are designating your thoughts as cognitive infrastructure. I guess this is kind of like corporations being people in court. The Disinformation Governance Board is now on trial. This is really good for the states of Missouri and Louisiana. Allegedly, these texts center around Easterly and Madison discussing a disinformation governance board. And then there is Lauren Protentis. This is the last. A move to depose Protentis because of her membership in CISA, Dis, and Malinformation Team, MDM team. She specializes in partnering with socials to limit citizen speech. Not the last. Vivek Murthy, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, for his public campaign to censor individuals who spread misinformation about Charlie 19. He sent a RFI, request for information, about how tech companies would censor speech deemed for misinformation. Plaintiffs urge that Dr. Murthy also engages in communications with high-level Facebook executives about the demand for greater censorship of Charlie 19 misinformation. These communications established that Murthy was engaged in these communications and was even sent reports to obtain Dr. Murthy's opinion on censorship. Those reports are going to be golden. The writing of that's evidence. That's excellent. Carol Crawford, chief of the digital media branch of the Division of Public Affairs of the CDC, literally worked on the Census Bureau to identify people she deemed to be spreading misinformation. So it's the Census Bureau, NARA, the FBI, DOJ, Congress. It's all corrupt. And the attorney generals, and we've noted this for quite a while on Team America, the attorney generals and the judges in Missouri and Louisiana are making the difference here. They also wanted to depose a Daniel Kimmage, the acting coordinator of the Global Engagement Center at the State Department. Remember, I said the other day that according to the Australian Parliament, the KONNECH stuff goes back to China in Wuhan through the U.S. embassies and consulates there. And so they're saying this conspiracy is so vast, it's overwhelming, it legitimately compromises the whole government. I've been saying that for a long time from the intelligence point of view, but this is now from the legal lawfare point of view, which is proof, proven as evidence of chain of custody in court, which is very good news because it pushes back things going kinetic, which all of us who are familiar with war and violence and kineticism are happy, because when that happens, you know, a lot of people talk like they want it, and those are the ones who have never been in it, and it is a terrible thing. But to tie that in, it's very important that Big Brother is now working with Big Mom, and that is the multitask unified model, or MUM. And this is the Google's new AI learning machine. And it was first unleashed to fight what it considered Charlie 19 misinformation. Here we go again. Because again, the deep state double government is the pusher and the pimp. And every other commercial is about buy this drug, buy that drug. But the main thing is get your jabs and your boosters so that we can own you and your children forever. And you are the addict. The government is the pimp and the pusher. And you are the prostitute. So Forbes article described how MUM would check information across multiple reliable sources to allow the system to come to a general consensus, which is, of course, democracy, mob rule. Google has long ago ceased being a way to find different answers, and its search results are deliberately repetitive. I mean, I don't use it. Sometimes if I'm on a certain show, they say, hey, you got to use Chrome, and I'll do it. But, you know, it's Mad Cows or Swiss Cows, not Mad Cows, Swiss Cows, Brave are some of the better ones. There's other ones. VPNs are good, of course. Search is an illusion with them. The user thinks he's browsing the internet when he's actually spinning his wheels in Google's walled garden. I love that, walled garden. This is most obvious in shopping and in politics. Or as Pandu Nayak, VP of Search at Google, wrote, by using our latest AI model, multitask unified model, MUM, our systems can now understand the notion of consensus, which is when multiple high-quality sources on the web all agree on the same fact. And so this is a centralized computer base, and this is a monopoly. And he talks about how Googlers have long been obsessed with the idea of replicating Star Trek's fictional computer in the female voice. And so this is Big Mom, Big Sister. And my family and I went out as Trekkies last night for Halloween, because I am definitely, you know, a Trekkie without a doubt. But Gene Roddenberry was like, hey, we're getting past racism and poverty because we're mining the asteroids. So everybody's rich. And so we can move on to real stuff. And early Star Trek episodes featured the episode where they went to the Roman planet, and then there was Yeshua there again. You know, they talked about it at the end. There's a planet where they went for the Yangs and the Calms, the Yankees and the Communists, where they brought in the Star-Spangled Banner at the end, and then the We the People and then you start to see it leave and fall apart, and there's no God and there's no devil, and it just keeps going downhill from there. And then you got, you know, trannies and in the latest episodes, and homosexuals French kissing each other in the latest stuff, because it's all propaganda. It's all television. But by 2022, Google's hopeless search has no longer any interest in providing search. It's just a monopoly. And so it will die. It's already dying. No one will use it because this will all end. But it's now, if you have an Android phone, they'll do pre-bunking, which will preemptively enter what you're looking for. And Jigsaw is the company's most explicitly political arm, attacking views that can gain traction. And, I've been through this in Facebook and Yankee Tango and Twitter and everything as well. And as the midterms approach, YouTube spokesman Ivy Choi, that sounds like Vietnamese or Chinese American. The video site's recommendations are continuously and prominently surfacing midterms related content for authoritative news sources. And so that's big tech monopolies, exactly what's happening. That also reminds me, and I posted on Patreon today, somebody said, oh, well, I read Heinlein and Bradbury. I'm like, of course I read Heinlein. Starship Troopers, got a military. Everybody reads that. But I've also read Stranger in a Strange Land. Once upon a time, there was a Martian named Valentine's Michael Smith. But there's also John Ringo, who wrote The Hot Gates and Live Free or Die. Awesome sci-fi. I'd love to get him on here. And he's a former military. I think he was a corpsman maybe. And maybe that's Ian Douglas, but where he writes about a really futuristic society that's controlled by AIs. And there's a sparrow at the beginning of the book. The sparrow dies on a branch and falls down to the ground, and mother notices it. And of course, that's a play against the Gospels, where not a sparrow falls that your Father in heaven doesn't realize. But then the plot is there's about 7 world leaders that run things, and they can't come in with weapons, but some lady with big hair comes in with some bees and some perfume, and then she puts the bees with the perfume, and that makes a weapon, and they start to fight, and they split out. Everybody's got different regions of what's going on, and they start turning off the net, and there's people living in volcanoes, and they're gone. There are people living at the bottom of the ocean, they're gone. People are living in little bubbles out in outer space, they're gone. And all of a sudden, it's back to the basics and the reenactors and the living history folks, like I am. If you follow me on Patreon at all, you'll see me posting stuff where I'll be Apache kitted out and doing natural native horsemanship as well. And important to know those things. And all the SF guys who are awake and Intel guys who are awake, moving out to the country and preparing. And so there is a lot of this out there. And DHS Department of Homeland Security is broadening its efforts to curb speech for the election. Though it shuttered its disinformation governance boards, it still plans to target inaccurate information, especially Charlie 19, racial injustice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of support to Ukraine. So, I mean, it's so obvious. Run one war into the ground, start another. Want trannies to show up, and now you want red-blooded American boys and girls to go die for you. And Laura Demlow, an FBI official, warned that the threat of subversive information on social media could undermine support for U.S. government. You think? So there's lots of these indications. The inclusion of the 21 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan is particularly noteworthy because they say they're going to investigate that. So I don't hold any hopes out of rhinos. It's the uniparty. And we should have never stayed that long. We should have just, again, I've talked about this many times. Operations Detachments A Teams 529 and 555 Triple Nickel had wrapped this up in 3 to 4 months, send in a kill team every spring. And that's it. But then when a big war in Iraq and everything else, it's worth remembering that the U.S. has lied about a variety of issues, from the Tonkin Gulf in Vietnam to Iraqi WMD to Wuhan, Charlie 19, all of that. and that they are continuing to lie, but they are losing cover, which is their concealment, at an ever rapidly pace. And we are gaining human terrain ground. That is very important to understand. And so that's Missouri Attorney General Eric Schmidt has filed a lawsuit that has revealed this conspiracy between DHS, Twitter, Facebook, Wikipedia to coordinate the 2020 elections. And this is also being revealed, as I said, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. So lots happening, and this is all good news that it's all beginning to collapse. And so, again, resistance movements or fourth generation warfare take decades, if not centuries. I always quote fourth generation revolutionary warfare against Rome took 300 years, 3 centuries. But the pace is rapid here, and we will win this, even though we are not always winning. But the signs are there. And this is a really good news sign that there is a break in the lawfare because they're trying to handle New York and Michigan and Texas and LA. And meanwhile, all of a sudden, Missouri and Louisiana flank them. That's excellent. That's exactly what we should be doing. So I am very glad to hear that. And I also want to point out that big church, as one of my students says, big church, the church has failed us magnificently, and that Tom Knight, professor at MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab, the genetic code is 3.6 billion years old, and it's time for a rewrite. Yeah, because you know so much about it, and God didn't really know what He's doing, and that goes along with Billy Graham's son, who got the jab and then had a heart attack. And the Patriot Switch folks were working for them, and they wouldn't get the jab. And so they fired him. And so like, hey, can we work with you? I'm like, yeah, sure. So that's very typical of, you're just going to see all kinds of people who just want power. In the Didache, they call them Christmongers, Christ sellers. And I think the term would be constitution mongers as well. And this is the Charlie 19 gambit by Big Pharma and the deep state exactly matches where the German church was in the 30s with Bonhoeffer's Confession Church versus the sellout official German church. And they talk about a boxcar of Jews siding near a church, shouting for help. And what did the church do? They just sang louder to drown out their cries. They did nothing. So this is good. And I'm not a big fan of Paul, but in this case, I'll quote Paul. This matter arose because some false believers had infiltrated our ranks to spy on the freedom we have in Christ Jesus and to make us slaves. We did not give in to them for a moment, so that the truth of the gospel might be preserved for you. So that's a great way to end. So fear not, God bless, keep the faith and hold fast. We are winning. This is what winning looks like. Remember, freedom is never given. It is earned. It is fought for. It is taken. So take it.